get Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 9. This is something that's very important moving forward. Let's get Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 9. This is something very pertinent we have to keep in mind.
Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun.
Right, because as I say, not only does history repeat itself, but there's nothing new anymore. Even if you look in modern day, look at all your movies coming out. How many times do they continue to recreate the same thing over and over and over again, running out of ideas? Because it's all the same information. So even in regards to the thing that we have, it just transformed into a new way. Like your vehicle. Vehicle is just a modern form of transportation, but they had transportation then. So even like, with your phones, modern form of communication. We had different ways of communication back then. All these things are just transformed. That's why I said there's nothing new, because the same thing we deal with, just like you had to work now, they had to work back then. You have stress now, they had stress then. That's why I deal. There's nothing new under the sun. But in particular, when we look at Egypt, what is the number one thing Egypt is almost synonymous with when you think of it? What is it? Anybody? Okay, bondage. So that's very key when you look at bondage. Servitude. Get Exodus chapter 1 and verse 13. And the image that you see here up on your right is actually it's from the tomb of Rickmeyer, the vizier in Thebes, Luxor tomb, TT100, dated to Thutmose III, who was one of the pharaohs said to have existed during the time of the Israelites in Egypt.
Exodus 1 and 13. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor.
Exactly. So known for bondage and servitude. But let's get Jeremiah 50 and 33, because there's something very similar with that servitude and this servitude, which we'll get in Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 33.
Jeremiah 50 and 33. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together.
They were oppressed together. Because when the children of Israel were in Egypt, it was as a complete nation. So all of the children of Israel were oppressed together, just as it is this day. In our American captivity, all throughout the Americas, we are oppressed together by the same nation of people. Although, yes, today we identify the Spaniards and the Europeans and so on and so forth as different nations, but those are all just tribes, part of one nation. Just like all those that were oppressed by them, your so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans throughout the Americas, whether it's Brazil, Guatemala, Cuba, whatever it is, Haiti, we were all oppressed together by the same nation of people as defined in the scriptures. So that's one of the key things that we have together. Now we're going to get into a particular aspect, knew not Joseph. We're going to get it from then. Let's get Exodus chapter 1. We're dealing a lot with Exodus. Let's get Exodus chapter 1, and let's read verse 1 through 8.
Exodus chapter 1, verse 1. Now these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. Dan, and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And all the souls that came of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. And Joseph was in Egypt already. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation, and the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
So let's get the importance of that. So one of the books we're going to be dealing with is the book of Josephus. So Josephus was an Israelite. He that lived in Rome. He dealt in the time of the Romans. So with it, he at first betrayed his people and tried to, I would say, make up for it by writing about his people's history. So you can read more about him in the book of Josephus in the introduction, but we're going to get Abraham. So get Genesis chapter 12, verse 10. Hold Exodus, we're coming back here. Let's get the significance of this. Get Genesis chapter 12 and verse 10. Let's read about Abraham in Egypt.
Genesis 12 and 10. And there was a famine in the land, and Abraham went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land.
Right. So Abraham went down to Egypt. Let's read more about what Abraham did while he was in Egypt, what it is that history says about him. So we have Josephus. We're going to read Antiquities. We're going to read chapter 1, sentence 166 to 168. Read that.
Whereas the Egyptians were formerly addicted to different customs and despised one another's sacred and accustomed rites, and were very angry one with another. On that account, Abram confirmed with each of them, and confuting the reasoning they made use of, every one of their own practices, demonstrated that such reasoning were vain and void of truth.
Right, because during the time when Abram was in Egypt, he reasoned with the Egyptians. Because what land did Abram come from? Came from the Chaldees, right? So the Chaldeans being the Ethiopians today, or generally known as. So with it, or he was in the land of the Sumer. You heard of the Sumerians, right? Those are a Hamitic people, African people. But they weren't dwelling in the land of Egypt. They're a civilization that was outside of Egypt, which most history you'll find predates Egypt. But continue.
Whereupon he was admired by them in those conferences as a very wise man and one of great sagacity. When he discoursed on any subject, he undertook. And this not only in understanding it, but in persuading other men also to ascend to him. He communicated to them arithmetic and delivered to them the science of astronomy. For Abraham came into Egypt.
Read that again.
For before Abram came into Egypt, they were unacquainted with those parts of learning. For that science came from the Chaldeans into Egypt, and from thence to the Greeks also.
So with it, you see how, beginning with our forefathers, Abram, did he contribute a little bit to Egypt? He did, absolutely. He brought in aspects of understanding and knowledge that prior to him coming in, they were not formally aware of. So with it, and we're going to get Joseph in particular. We're going to get Genesis chapter 41, get verse 29 through 30. And we read Joseph did the same thing, right? Did he not bring in aspects of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that also helped that civilization to thrive? Keep all these things in mind, because these points are very, very important as we move forward. Read Genesis chapter 41, verse 29 through 30.
Verse 29, behold, there came 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land.
Right. If you read chapter 41, you read about Pharaoh's dream, and then the 7 years of plenty and famine, as Joseph was breaking down the understanding to the king of Egypt, or the Pharaoh of Egypt. Skip down and read verse 34 through 40.
Verse 34, let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years.
Mm-hmm.
And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh. And let them keep food in the cities, and that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine.
So here it is, after Joseph broke down the understanding of the vision, he gave him guidance. And this is the part of the scriptures that people take from. You know, they don't actually give due credit to, because the scriptures deal with economics. The scriptures deal with accounting. The scriptures deal with being a secretary. They deal with, because Joseph was operating in all of those levels, which people don't bring out. He was being that unto Pharaoh in this regard. He's saying, look, this is what the situation is. This is what you want to do. That's how he was contributing. No different than our people today, working those same things and have done those things for the benefit of that nation. So read on.
And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh.
Because with it, we have to understand that when things make sense, and this is something you can't take away from anybody, when something makes sense and it's applicable, people are going to use it, regardless of what nation, creed, or background you come from. So with it, if it's good, they're going to use it. However, the problem comes in when a lot of times you have people, they don't want to give you that due credit, because once again, as we read, what incentive would a nation have, and this is going to tie in very important, what incentive does a nation have to give another people credit for helping them? What incentive would you have? Would that really make sense? Think about it. Would you really want to teach your children how another nation helped you? No. Why not? Why do you think that would be a problem? Why wouldn't you teach that? Why wouldn't you embrace another nation or people helping you? Can someone answer that? And may you pass them a mic, please? Who can answer that? Okay. Nana. Pass it to her, please.
Pride.
Pride. Okay, what else? May you pass it? Oh, the Shaq.
It might cause your children or whoever you teach that to admire that other nation instead of your own.
Correct. Beautiful. Good. You have something to say in the back? Go ahead.
Like you said, dependency and the fact that they would devalue where they come from and who they are as a people.
Good, good. We'll get more into it and we'll reflect momentarily. Continue to read on. Down to verse 40.
Yeah. And in the eyes of all his servants, and Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is?
Because when you see something credible or useful in someone, you're going to use that gift because it's something good. Can you find one who understands things the way that this person does, or the way that these people do? Read on.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art.
Because even as a nation of people, our people have a level of wisdom. Even think about it, when even with Esau taking us into slavery, remember, with it, what kind of sense would it make to just take a random people? Think about it. If I'm trying to build or I'm getting these people to serve, I wouldn't just use anyone random. I would have to use people who I know would be good in that particular aspect of labor if I want productivity to take place. Otherwise, they would simply die out, or they wouldn't be very productive. It wouldn't really get done. So you have to have a people that have an aspect of intelligence in order to build anything productive. Let's continue. We're going to go back to, that's enough with that. We can go back to Josephus, and let's actually read Antiquities of the Jews. We're going to read Book 2, Chapter 6, Paragraph 1.
You want me to read it?
In the red.
Now after Egypt had happily passed over 7 years, according to Joseph's interpretation of the dreams, the famine came upon them in the 8th year. And because the misfortune fell upon them when they had no sense of it beforehand, they were all sorely afflicted by it, and came running to the king's great gates. And he called upon Joseph, who sold the corn to them, being become confessedly a savior to the whole multitude of the Egyptians. Nor did he open the market to corn for the people of that country only, but strangers had liberty to buy also. Joseph being willing that all men who are naturally kind to one another should have assistance from those that lived in happiness.
Right, because understanding more about our forefathers also understand more about us and our forefathers' immediate forefathers' contributions to America. Because when you look at the aspect of Joseph, Joseph understood the aspect of bartering, trade. He understood capitalization. He understood how to become wealthy in that situation, and also how to, at the same time, take care of the population. Understanding that an economy will fall if you don't take care of the population. Because what's going to happen? If they're not taken care of, then that's how you're going to have disorder and chaos in the kingdom. So he made sure order was maintained. And we're going to look at now. Get Exodus chapter 1 and verse 8. Go back to Exodus chapter 1 and verse 8.
Exodus 1 and 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
So now to highlight and go back and reflect more with this, when it says there rose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph, this deals with the aspect, not only did they not know as far as everything pertaining unto their works, because remember, with everything being passed on, and you saw, as we read, the aspect with Joseph and how he dealt, and it said he called in Joseph, he sold them corn and wine, and sold the corn to them, being become confessedly a savior to the whole multitude of the Egyptians. Now you're looking at another people that came in being a savior unto you. That isn't something you would happily talk about in your textbooks. That isn't something you would happily talk about. Why? Because who wants to look to another nation that helped them or saved them? That isn't something you want to really teach your people, emphasize in your people. The same thing, and correlate that to the aspect of the inventions of so many of your Hispanics and Latinos and so many of your blacks here in America. How much of it did you really learn in high school? Name one invention that you learned in high school that they told was primarily orchestrated or made or crafted by the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. None. Why is that? Because the whole goal is to make sure you don't have any value in yourself and that everything goes back to America. Just like in Egypt, when it says that they knew not Joseph, they didn't know anything concerning his works. They didn't know anything concerning anything that he did. The new king, the new Pharaoh, he didn't continue to teach that to his people. Oh, what? He did that? Forget about it. Why? Because no, I'm not going to uplift another nation of people, that they were our savior, that they helped us. So of course they're going to downplay it. So of course, just like in America, they're not going to lift up the inventions of your people. And we have so many more inventions that aren't recognized because we didn't own the patent rights. We couldn't patent our ideas. We couldn't do those things. It was illegal for us to do so. So everything went to the white man. And then the same aspect, you have to understand that almost all inventions were made by your so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, hands down, regardless of how much information you have to do to research it. Why? Because an aspect for someone to invent something, an invention is made to make something easier. What aspect of reason did the white man have to produce things to make his life easier when he had other people to do it for them? What incentive do you have? The slaves had every incentive because the aspect was life was so hard on them because they had to do all the physically laborious things that the white man was not doing, even to this very day in many aspects. So with it, you understand the aspect of how he downplayed the significance of your mind. Remember, our people were slaves. Our people were still the lowest in society, yet they're inventing all these wonderful things. How is that? Because we're brilliant and wise people. Off top. And that's what they didn't want us to know, both in Egypt and in now. And they don't want to highlight. They don't want you to understand those things. They don't want you to see those things. Because look at all the free labor that we did. Where's the thanks for that? Because just like with Abraham and just like with Joseph, they didn't give them their due thanks. You don't see where they created great monuments. Well, you'll find a couple if you watch a few documentaries, like Patterns of the Exodus on Netflix. But for the most part, they didn't give them that same due reverence. Because why reverence another people? Same thing with the indigenous population. For example, where's their thanks for working in the forest mines and things of that nature? For example, the Native Americans helping the Pilgrims. Where's their thanks? Where's that aspect of gratitude? The Home Depot. They were your Home Depot. They were the ones that taught the white man how to survive on this land. He didn't know. He didn't have that knowledge. But where's the thanks for those things? So the same thing back in Egypt. Where's the thanks of our forefathers' contribution and knowledge and understanding that continue to help improve the Egyptian society thrive and be better and do better? Where's that thanks? Where's the thanks of Joseph? But this is the same mindset. We have to see this. And just listen to this, because this is no different than the mindset then. We're going to play this video, and I want you to listen very carefully.
For history. This Midwestern housewife, like a lot of white Americans, does not think the Negro should present history's bill to her.
We hear so much about the slavery. 300 years ago, our grandfathers were slaves, or 200 years ago, our grandfathers were slaves. Well, for God's sakes, did we have anything to do with that? I had no part in it. I had no slaves. My folks didn't. My grandparents didn't. Are they blaming us for what happened 3 years ago? Let's forget the past. Think of the future. Build up the future. And why keep hemming and hawing over the same thing over and over and over again? And they say, you must give me land because my grandfather was a slave. Well, then I would say, for God's sakes, find the man who had your grandfather as a slave and then demand the land from him. Don't bother me because I have no part of it.
Across the country, we asked whites whether the main reason Negroes had not made more progress was because of racial discrimination or because Negroes had not worked hard enough. This lawyer expressed a view we heard most often.
We find there is a reluctance upon the part of too many Negroes, particularly among the young, to take the hard and remunerative jobs that must be necessary to earn a living. There is a feeling that for some reason somebody owes them a living.
Just about half of whites in our survey said the Negro has not made more progress because he has not worked hard enough. Only 15% blames discrimination. Some had no opinion.
I feel that they're basically lazy when this summer, for example, opportunity was given to them to better themselves in getting as many jobs as possible in various fields of retail, wholesale, and they don't take the full advantage of accepting the responsibility of going out for these jobs. They feel that they're not good enough for them.
About half of whites agreed with this woman, that Negroes tend to be lazy more than whites. And this woman mentioned another charge against Negroes, that they have low morals.
Their sex problem, now, let's face it now, how many white people have 10 illegitimate children? Very few. Very few. This seems to be a trend with them. And I often wondered what happens to these here men who follow these children. Are they busy making babies elsewhere, or are they busy in the civil rights march yelling for their civil rights?
And 4 out of 10 whites in our survey agreed that Negroes, more than whites, have low moral standards. However, half or more of whites disagree with some of the views you have just heard. For example, they reject the idea that Negroes are more likely than whites to have low morals. But for the moment, we're concentrating on attitudes opposed to racial integration. In Chicago, we talked with a group of whites who call themselves lower middle class. They are worried about Negroes moving into their neighborhood.
And they are not responsible citizens. Until they live like we are, we don't want them.
I don't want to live with me, to tell you the truth. Whether they take care of me or not, I don't want to live with them. Because they ran away from home. And if I wanted to live with them, I wouldn't be paying high taxes like I am. I would have stayed where I was.
More than half of whites in our survey believe Negroes are more likely than whites to run down their own neighborhoods.
In the South, they throw the garbage out of the window and the pigs come and eat it. Here they throw the garbage out of the window and no pigs come and eat it.
So generally the same mindset and ideology that these Caucasians had, the Egyptians had the same mindset and ideology towards us. They still had the same mindset. Lazy, not worth anything. Multiple, because, for example, read verse 7. Exodus chapter 1 and verse 7.
And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty.
Because we were multiplying even then just as we are now. The same thing was happening. We were still multiplying, filling the land. The Egyptians hated that just like white people hate it today. They still hated it. Drop down and read verse 12.
But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel.
So once again, the Egyptians also agreed because of us. Just like you see with the white people being grieved because of us. We don't want them in our land. We don't want them in our neighborhood. Nah, they ain't destroying everything, whatever it is. So they had the same mindset and ideology towards us. Why do you think they decided to kill us? Why do you think they put a hit out on our people to destroy us back then, just as the white man does today? They need enough of you to keep their economy going, but they don't need that much of you to overwhelm the land because they really despise you. But you're profitable to them. So they don't need all of you there. They just need to control your numbers better. But you see that, for example, in this image, you see how you have the white man climbing up on the black man's back and said, this is for your own good. He finally gets up to the top where he needs to be. Then when we finally say enough, I'm getting up, he says, I'm sorry about being racist earlier, but I know better now. He says, well, hey, give me a hand. Why don't you? And he said, of course not. That would be reverse racism. Because a lot of times white people get to this status and then look down on you for not being where they are, not knowing and fully understanding of how they use you to get there, but expect you to be on the same platform as them. So calling blacks lazy, why? Because they aren't working for free. All the hard work that we put in and still put in, because we work the low economy jobs, the low wage jobs, and the most physically laboring jobs, the longest hours, and get paid hardly nothing for it. While they work things where they get to sit back, take vacations all the time, and make 6 figures, 7 figures, so on and so forth. Of course, not all, because that's of course what they'll say, not all white people, of course, yeah. But once again, looking at the mass majority, compared to the mass majority of whites, mass majority of blacks, complete difference. So there's a big separation. And let's get that. His people and the separation, let's get that then. So when you look at, the Egyptians, and you look at the Africans, the Egyptians, and our people, so you look at the Israelites and the Semitic people there's a difference. You can tell the immediate difference when you look at this image, right? Immediately, those two people don't look the same, right? Attire is different. So even the level of blackness is different. But get Exodus chapter 1 and verse 9. This is what we can understand. Get Exodus chapter 1 and verse 9. Read that.
Exodus 1 and 9. And he said unto his people.
He said unto what?
His people.
That's what we have to understand. We are not the same people. They know that. Africans know that we are not the same people as them, which we'll get more information on. They understand. We're the ones that don't understand that. We're the ones, just like with Joseph, you want to help everybody. You want to do what you can to help others. That's in our spirit. And that's why when we come into rule, there's going to be true peace and true happiness, because we're going to look out for both the rich, the poor, and judge righteous judgment across the board. Because think of the problems why we have with Esau. He doesn't judge righteously across the board, right? He isn't fair across the board. You see injustices. That's what causes so many problems in a community. So with it, and continue to read Exodus chapter 1 and verse 9.
And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we.
So he said unto his people, get at Sirach chapter 33, verse 10 through 11. Because we understand the Most High divided us. Yes, he did make, as many refer to the human race, or mankind, which is known as Adam. So he did create Adam. He did create man. So, however, he separated man and divided man. Divided man through skin tone. Divided man through hair texture. Divided man through attributes and abilities. That's why people say, well, all men are created equal. That's not what the scripture said. The scripture did what he divided. Read that.
Ecclesiastes 33, verse 10. And all men are from the ground.
So although all men come from the earth, yeah, people say, yeah, we all have blood in our bodies. Yeah, but we don't all have the same blood type. Read that.
And Adam was created of the earth. And much knowledge the Lord hath divided them.
So the Most High wasn't just randomly choosing. He took knowledge into his creation. He took knowledge into how he was dividing them. Read up.
And made their ways diverse.
And made their ways diverse. Because when we look at talents, where do you see most of the talents and abilities? Within Israel. That's who you enjoy watching on TV, acting, so on and so forth. That has the majority of the knowledge, skill, wisdom, and abilities when put on that same platform and taught the same information. We will excel better than your other nation. Not saying they won't have their geniuses, they won't have There's that are wise and other heirs. The Most High gave them gifts too. But he gave more gifts unto Israel. No different than you meet people that are talented. You might be able to sing, dance, whatever it is, but then you meet someone else, he can sing, dance, and poetry and draw, and has so many more gifts. But that's what he did with the nation of Israel, to make us a special people. Was that all of 11?
That was all of it.
Okay, let's continue. So with that, this image comes from the tomb of Kenimhotep in Beni Yassan, Middle Egypt, in case anyone was wondering. So, but now once again, you have to understand, just like with the Egyptians, just like with the white men, they were having meetings and councils against you. They were plotting against you, against your downfall. You don't think their government was meeting in the same way as the white men, plotting against you? You don't think they were doing the same things? Because once again, they had a government, they had leaders, they had officials, they had meetings. They know and understand that we are separate. But our people are the ones that are confused. We want to be white man, we want to be the Arab man, we want to be the African man, we want to be everybody else except for who we are. Even now, let's get some aspects of Africans admitting. We'll get a couple of them.
The problem is, you Israelites, you black people in this country, what do you say about some people, man? I call them inferior, I call you slaves, we turn you into slaves, and when we didn't need it no more, we kick you out of Israel, out of Egypt, and out of Africa. We sold it to America, and that's where we want you to stay, and we don't want you back in Africa again. Now, you black people in this country, it's time for you to wake up and realize that this stink, this stink, doodle-eating African does not care about you. He's not your people, he hates you, and that's why he sold you out of Africa. And you admit that, right? You're admitting that today. The white man is not a devil. We sold it to the white man. Right. If we had sold it to our devil, you would not have been alive today as Israel. Now, let's get back to devil. You did. We don't want to die yet. So we didn't do that. Chop our heads up with slavery and all that, sacrifices to your God. We ate it. What do you mean sacrifice it? Say it again? We ate the goddamn eggs when we chopped them off. We didn't sacrifice you. We used to eat your assholes over there. In Africa? Yeah. Before you forgot that we used to eat the men over there. We used to eat people over there. Yeah. And then when we got fed up of your flesh, it was no good anymore, and we thought it was unclean, we decided to throw you in slavery to get rid of you. In case you multiply and subdue the earth over there. Okay, now, but let's get back to the point. Let's try to get away.
So here's another one. It's a recent one. So with this one, you'll highlight. Yeah, we'll talk about it afterwards. Just listen.
You're black American, you're trash. I'm from Kenya, Africa. You're black American, you're trash like your mothers. You're black American, that's why you're worshiping me. That's why you're worshiping me. You have to stay here and like I'm a celebrity. Because you have other stupid mothers. You're black American. You're trash. I'm from Kenya, Africa. My mother told me in Kenya, don't ever associate black American. You're trash. Don't self-esteem. You're not a man.
So with it, and I'll reflect in case you guys weren't able to hear things good. So from the first one, he was dealing with, from the first video with the man, he was dealing with the aspects that we were beneath them. That, because they're taught the true history of our people. They're taught that their people sold, the Israelites into slavery. So that's why you meet a lot of them and find out that they know who we are. They know that the blacks here are not the same as the ones over there. They understand that aspect. Even with this woman from Kenya, she was from Kenya. And she was saying how her mother taught her to never associate with the blacks here in America, that they're trash, that they're nothing, they're inferior to you, that they're beneath you. Don't the whites have the same mindset? Because they were taught the same. That's why the Egyptians dealt in the way that they did with us, because they understood that we were beneath them. That's how they felt. That was their ideology. The same thing with white America. They feel that we're beneath them. We're underneath them. We're trash. So don't think that skin color and complexion changes anything. Why do you think when you go in the Koreans, man, shop, you hurry up and buy it? That he oppresses you. You see all these different videos with the Korean man beating up on our people, beating up on our women, whatever it is, because they don't respect you. They don't value you. They don't love you. They hate you. They know you're not the Asian man, the African man, the Arab man, the white man. They all understand you are not their people. Because Africans really loved us. They would have came back for us if we were really their people. If they really loved and valued us, if we were really for them, they would have fought for us. They would have came back. You don't see that. That never happened. Many African leaders that you have your leaders. We good. So, I remember, Tazariah Wan, he was telling me, about his old pastor. I said, he was trying to tell him about the truth, years ago. And he said, my people, this is what his pastor said. He said, my people are not like your people. We read books. That's what he said. He's an African pastor back then. Thinking, of course, back then, you black, you think everyone black, your people. Back then, he said, nah, my people are not like your people. We read books. Understanding that even then, the Africans, they understand that they're not the same. It was one event we went to, I want to say we went to the park. It was some, pro-black event we had went to, and I was talking to some of the security there. They're a gang affiliate, and I talked to one of them. His mom was African, and his dad was Jacob. I asked him, so are they the same? You see, you think that your mom's people, your dad's people, like they're the same people? He said, nah. I said, so they different? He said, man, completely different. We ain't the same people as them. We ain't the same. But his mom was African, his dad was from over here. And he said, man, they're not the same. We're not the same people. Nothing is the same about us except us having melanin. That's it. It is not the same. So, and that's crazy, but it's the aspect of they understand that, but it's hard for us to understand. No different with white people.
You see this and you wonder, did he lose his keys or is he blatantly stealing that bike? In broad daylight, he hammers and then saws on the chain. When that doesn't work, he pulls out an industrial-sized bolt cutter, and when he's asked, he fesses up.
You lost a lot?
No, not exactly.
But he's not a real thief. Justin Kelly is an actor, and our hidden cameras are rolling.
What happened? Nothing. I can't get through the lock. I mean, I know it's weird, but you wouldn't happen to know whose bike this is? No. Alright, good. Thank you.
While the scene troubles Tim Lucas enough to turn around for a second look, he's in a family outing. His wife looks alarmed too, but they both move on.
Colleen, my wife, she's like, he's totally stealing that bike. She was like, call the cops.
It turns out Lucas is a pastor, but our thief's confession is safe with him.
It was odd that somebody had all that equipment.
But you didn't do anything.
No.
That's true.
That's the bottom line.
Lots of people stop and stare. A few even question the actor.
I guess I have to ask, is that your bike?
I guess technically no.
Okay.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
When no one tries to stop our thief, he ratchets it up a notch with an electric saw, even putting on a pair of goggles. That finally catches the attention of Arlene Menard and her husband George.
Well, that's your bike.
No, why? It's not your bike, is it?
I just want to know if it's your bike.
No, it's not my bike, but it's not yours. What do you think?
I did maybe next time. If it's not yours, I'll just let somebody know.
As Arlene sets off to find help, we decide to clue the couple in on our experiment.
I think most people don't want to get involved in a situation like this, and so they just pass it by.
George is right. In over an hour, about 100 people pass by. Only George and Arlene try to stop him. Some tell us they plan to call the police later. Others say they're scared. Keep moving. This woman and her friends give our thief the benefit of the doubt. When we ask why, Lisa Washington tells us first impressions matter.
I remember thinking young white men don't usually carry burglar tools.
So we all make assumptions, huh?
I'm thinking maybe he works for the park, and our thoughts were if he'd been black or a person of color, the police would have been called in immediately.
We're going to do that experiment with an African-American kid. What do you think's going to happen?
Oh, I think people will be very distressed.
I think someone's gonna whip out their cell phone and call the park police.
Will then, we replace our white thief with this young man, Matlock. Remember, both actors dress in a similar way and are about the same age.
Is that your bike?
Nah.
Then what are you cutting the chain for?
Right away. Right away, somebody yelled. Wow. Within seconds, another person confronts our thief.
You guys get it? The white man was out there cutting away at the lock for an hour. About 100 people passed by. only one couple said something and really actually pressed the issue. Out of 100 people, white man stealing a bite, and he's blatant. That your bite? Nah, not really. You know, that your oh, you know whose bite this is? You think you can help me cut it? You know. And then the aspect when as soon as our people do the same thing, within seconds, they stop them. That's oppression. That's what our people were dealing with. They didn't have that same privilege. Being a citizen, it was different. The same thing with the Egyptians. That's why it deals with, and that's the aspect when it deals with, they knew that they were separate people, completely different. So the rules that would not apply the same to the Egyptians as it would to the Israelites, to the white man as it would our people, to the Arab man as our people, the Asian man as our people. Let's get the next part, more mightier than us. Get Exodus chapter 1 and verse 9 and read that.
Exodus 1 and 9. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we.
Because they understood the aspect that we were multiplying too fast. That's what the Egyptians understood. Damn, they multiplying too fast. How can we control? How can we stop them? It's too many of them. You know, same thing with the white man. The same ideology, the same concept of thinking, that it's no different. The same way you see the white man's prideful, Africans, a lot of them are prideful towards us. You know, same way you see it. It's the same pattern, the same aspect. We are not treated the same. And it's so hard for, especially, you know, for you to deal with that and to show other nations the same thing because they don't see it. They don't see it the same way you do. They just go back to, you're lazy. And I even talk to other nations, you know, on my job, and, you know, it's a lot of stuff they don't even see. They just see it from the same perspective as the white man. You know, oh, you guys always talking about slavery. Always going back to, oh, it was so hard, so difficult, you know, everything. But yet and still, they have so much remorse for, you know, 9/11 and the Holocaust and all those things. It's like, oh my goodness, it's so bad. And all those other things. Pray for France and, you know, pray for all those places. It's so remorseful when it comes to that. But unto us, it's just hate. Why? Because get Psalm chapter 83. What they get Psalm chapter 83. Because you have to remember, all the nations are against us. Whether one wants to be blunt and direct with it, or if it's just something that, an underlying issue, that you can see in the spirit, they're against us. Psalm chapter 83 and verse 1 through 4.
Psalms 83 and 1. Keep not thou silent, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God.
See, we're our forefathers saying, man, you know, Father, do something. You know, begging the Most High, man, don't just allow these things to happen. You know, read on.
For lo, thy enemies make it tumult.
So our enemies, they're making an uproar. That's drowning us out. Read on.
And they that hate thee have lifted up thy head.
Because those that hate the Most High, those that hate us hate the Most High. And with it, they're lifting up their head on pride. They're becoming more prideful. And the only way that they're lifting us up is to make money and merchandise off of us. That's how they're lifting us up. But read on.
They have taken crafty counsel against thy people.
See, these things are counsels that the Egyptians had against us, that the so-called white man has against us, that the other nations have against us. Read on.
And consulted against thy hidden ones.
And consult against us. Always doing things to oppose themselves to us, to destroy us. Read on.
They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.
They're always trying to cut us off, destroying the population. That's part of cutting us off from being a nation. Not giving our due reverence in our history and what we may have done or contributed to a certain people. That's destroying us, cutting us off from being a nation. Read on.
For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee.
See that? They've consulted together one consent. That's how you can go to the Arab man, the African man, the Asian man, whatever it is, and get the same type of response and not have that aspect of remorse, not have that aspect of true care, because they all see it as the same situation. They are all against you. Yeah, you know, Corey, yeah, you may have some that are more buddy-buddy, you know, not a problem, but they still understand who their people are. You know, white man is one of the most buddy-buddy of all nations, but yet and still, he knows who his people are. He'll be, oh yeah, hey, how are you? Come on, have a seat. You know, remember that man will rape, rob, murder, commit genocide, but he's the number one nation that put on a suit and act like he's the most holy of all nations. The most holy. Smile in your face. But that's the epitome of a devil, a deceiver. A deceiver. But read on. Read verse 6.
The tabernacle of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarenes.
So it's going through, men, that your white people, your Arabs, your Asian people. Read on.
Gabal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assur also is joined with them.
So, in the scripture, they're telling you that, look, the Arabs, the white man, the African man, the Asian man, they're all against you. And all these nations listed represent them. Some mention more so than others. But all of those, Africans, Arabs, Asians, Caucasian, they're all mentioned here. And they are all against you, as thus saith the Most High. But we're going to read Josephus, Appian, chapter 1. And we're going to read, book 1, and chapter 14 and sentence 82. Read that.
The whole nation was styled Hyksos, that is, shepherd king. For the first syllable, Hick, according to the sacred dialect, denotes a king, as is Sos, a shepherd. But this, according to the ordinary dialect, and of these is compound Hyksos, but some say that these people were Arabians.
Read on.
Now in another copy, it said that this is the word, Now in another copy, it is said that this word does not denote kings, but on the contrary denotes captive shepherds. And this on account the practice Hick.
Particle.
Wait, you said article?
Particle.
Oh, yes, Particle, Hick. For that Hick, with the aspiration in the Egyptian tongue, again denotes shepherds. And that expressly also, and this to me seems the more probable opinion, and more arguably agreeable to ancient history.
So with this breaking down, we're going to read about the Hyksos. Hyksos, shepherd kings, and as it was saying, also too in other notes, the captive shepherds. So, but dealing with that, they were our people thriving in Egypt that you read about. Just like we had times our people thriving here in the Americas. But read on.
Now Manetho, in another book of his, says that this nation, thus called shepherds, were also called captives in their sacred books.
Because in the Bible, it also lists that we were also in captivity in Egypt. Read on.
And this account of his is the truth. For feeding of sheep was the employment of our forefathers in the most ancient ages. And as they led such a wandering life in the field, in the feeding sheep, they were called shepherds. Nor was it without reason that they were called captives by the Egyptians, since one of our ancestors, Joseph, told the king of Egypt that he was captive, and afterward sent for his brethren into Egypt by the king's permission. But as for these matters, I shall make a more exact inquiry about them elsewhere.
Continue.
For when they saw how the nations of the Israelites flourished.
This is Antiquities of the Jews. This is book 2, sentence 202, or book 2, chapter 9, paragraph 1. Continue.
And were become eminent already in plenty of wealth, which they had acquired by their virtue and natural love of labor.
See that? Because our people, we had an aspect of working hard. Our people are not a lazy people. We never have been. We've always been an aspect, now we're becoming more lazy, but it's an aspect of our people always have an aspect of shooting towards something, taking initiative, having goals, having aspirations, building up ourselves and our people. We've done that, and we're going to get more of that history too, up to recently, but this is what you're dealing with our forefathers. And the Africans, the Egyptians are seeing how our people were flourishing, and they became very envious and upset with how our people were flourishing. Read on.
They thought their increase was to their own detriment, and having in length of time forgotten the benefit they had received from Joseph, particularly the crown being now come into another family, they became very abusive to the Israelites and contrived many ways of afflicting them.
Right, because just like I went over earlier, and just like with the white man, he forgets and has forgotten all the benefits of our people that we contributed to society. Never once in conversation we see anything good that they'll bring up about your people. It's always something negative, as if your people never contributed anything to this society. From irrigation systems, to lights, to street lights, to the iron, whatever it is, almost everything is contributed to the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans in this country that you have to be thankful for. Almost everything. But to leave it up to the white man, he'll tell you that absolutely nothing came from you and your people. The same thing with the Egyptians. They forgot whatever it is. Abraham, who was Abraham? Who's Joseph? You know, who are those people? What did they do? You know, I don't know nothing about them. Because those things aren't taught. Those things aren't reverenced. Those things aren't lifted up. The same thing with the so-called white man today. How he oppresses the same nature. Doesn't give us our due credit. Now, let's actually get this in now. And let's even get this, because this is another thing that's a problem. So, population was growing too much, but numbers is always one of your biggest threats. So, I'll read this. America's dying whites. Caucasian death rate now outstrips the birth rate in a third of states. New research shows more whites died in a third of states than were born. University of New Hampshire found Latino, Black, and Asian populations continue to grow, but white families are having less children. Meanwhile, soaring death rates among white middle-aged Americans mean that certain states are seeing falling Caucasian populations. White Americans are reportedly dying faster thanks to a silent epidemic of deaths from suicides, drug, and alcohol poisoning. New research blamed increased competition with China for soaring death rates among white middle-aged Americans. And that was from dailymail.com or .co.uk. So, once again, Egyptians were dealing with similar situations. We were multiplying too fast. And now with population comes power too. Because, once again, that's the biggest thing that we always feared was more than us. Which means we got to go to war, shoot, damn. They nearly double us. Odds ain't looking in our favor. A lot of those things come into play too. Let's get another one. This one is, it's official. Minority babies are the majority among the nation's infants. The U.S. is projected to have no racial or ethnic group as its majority within the next several decades. But that day apparently is already here for the nation's youngest children. So looking at age groups, so you have those like in your hundreds, those in like 80 to 100, and those like 60 to 80, and those like 40 to 60, and 20, and so on and so forth, and those that are like infants to, you know, adolescents and so on and so forth, right? So as you look in the age groups, you look at those from like your older. Think about your grandparents' generation. When their generation, yeah, there was more white people. But looking at our generation, we're growing more. So there's less, and over the years, less and less and less Caucasians being born, but more and more and more minorities being born. So already what they're saying, that shift is already here, looking at the next generation of people that are going to be in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Oh, it's already there. They already outnumber whites. So the babies already, when they grow up and they're your age, they're already outnumbering whites. That's what they're looking at. That's what the change among newborns is part of a projected U.S. demographic shift from majority white nation to one with no racial or ethnic majority. Majority group that is based on long-running immigration and birth trends. Let's get Exodus 1 and 9. Go back to Exodus to read Exodus chapter 1 and verse 9.
Exodus 1 and 9. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we.
See that? Because they're seeing how we're becoming more and mightier than them. We're increasing, and they're decreasing. So that's the aspect that the so-called white men saw, and the same thing that the Egyptians saw. Get Genesis 25 and 23.
Genesis 25 and 23. And the Lord said unto her, Two nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger.
So not only is this something that applied to when, the Israelites and the so-called white man came into existence, that the Israelites would be stronger, but this also applied that the Israelites will also be stronger than all other nations. We are the stronger people. We are the people that have the mass majority of gifts. And that isn't just something that, someone just pulling out of a hat. Now you look at all your sports industries. Anything that our people get a hand or foot in, we excel in. Even in academics, when put in that aspect, in that playing field. But they try to keep us away from academics because of the aspect that they don't want us to thrive in that aspect, because that's true power. So they just really dibble and dabble in the physical. Because if any other people were stronger, you would see them doing more recruiting from Asia for basketball, or Africa from basketball. If any other people were stronger, why not? They have the money and means to do so, right? Why deal with the blacks here? Why don't you go to the motherland and get the blacks from there? Or if they just so much better, why don't you just go and, recruit and get them? I'm sure they'll play. They'll get paid millions of dollars, right? Because our people have those gifts. Our people have those abilities. Whether it be soccer, football, tennis, golf, whatever it is. Our people, let them dominate if they choose, and we'll excel in it. And they understand that our people are the stronger people. Our people are the mightier people, the more capable people. Because even to go through the servitude and bondage that we did, that takes a strong people. You can't just send any people through that. Not all people are built for that. Get Baruch chapter 3, verse 35 through 36.
Baruch 3 and 35. This is our God. There shall none other be accounted of in comparison of him. He hath found out all the way of knowledge, and hath given it unto Jacob his servants, and to Israel his beloved.
So he made it a goal to give most of that knowledge and understanding unto the Israelites. And yeah, he gave the nations a little bit, but he gave the mass majority of it to us. So now let's get into the next segment of deal wisely with them and get them up out of the land. Let's get a little bit more than get Exodus chapter 1, verse 9 through 10. So you have to understand that it takes an aspect of education, knowledge, and wisdom for a person to deal wisely with someone. And that takes meetings. That isn't something you just, all right, let me deal wisely, just shoot them all. Just put them to work. No, you're plotting, you're planning. How can we deal with this situation? How can we destroy them? Read that. Read Exodus chapter 1, verse 9 through 10.
Exodus 1 and 9. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies, and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land.
So get them up out of the land. And there's a few ways to do that they did. We're going to read Antiquities, and we're going to read, this is book 2, sentence 204, or book 2, chapter 9, paragraph 1. Read that.
And for 400 years did they spend under these afflictions, for they strove one against the other, which should get them mastery. The Egyptians desired to destroy the Israelites by these labors, and the Israelites desired to hold out to the end under them.
So with the Egyptians were trying to pretty much work us to death. That's what they're trying to do. That's one way that they were trying to get us out of the land, destroying them. And what did that do? It also destroyed the family household. Why? Because you don't have time to spend educating your children, to build your nation if all your time is spent working. What does Esau do? The same thing, right? Work us to death. Because that way you're too tired to deal with your children. You're too tired to build a nation. I've been working all day, and then sometimes I work overtime, and all right, y'all just watch TV and, eat, and all right, y'all go to sleep. That's how he destroys us. That's one way of getting us up out of the land. That's one of the ways that they were shooting for. Because with it, we were in the land of Goshen, a.k.a. Avaris, a.k.a. the Nile Delta, which was a good land, a very good land, as you read Genesis 47, 5 through 6. Even now, look at the aspect with, us being, speaking for us that are here, us being in LA, us being in California, than us being in LA. What's the biggest thing now? Gentrification. Yeah, you know, yeah, and it's all an aspect, it's all by design. Yeah, we build something, you know, gets attention, then I can start hiking, you know, the price of everything in the area. You can't afford it, you can't pay it, so you gotta move elsewhere. And then we move in, you know. That's also a way of getting up out of the land. So getting us up out of the land. That's how the white man does it as well. So, and the other way is also too, oppression. In order to think like that, in order to think to oppress someone, in a sense you have to already be oppressing a people. Think about the aspect of how in order when you see the reasoning, read verse 10.
Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies, and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land.
So when you meditate on that aspect, the Israelites had to already have been getting oppressed for them to think in that regard. Because otherwise, everything was good. You wouldn't be concerned with them joining some other people. Think about it. If you have a good relationship or a good partnership, you're going to most likely deal favorable with that person, right? But if you guys aren't such on good terms, or there can be issues in a relationship, then there can be some concern, right? So automatically, if their whole idea was to oppress them or destroy them because they had fears of them joining another people or taking a different side, that showed that the relationship between them must not have been so great. There had to be some sort of tension there. Make sense? So the relationship, once again, wasn't that great. And let's get, and now more so. Let's get certain aspects. It's a short clip. So in this one, you'll see a similar situation with them working and trying to get us out of the land.
From Southfield.
A single piece of paper with a powerful message of hate.
When she saw it and read it, she was just upset about it.
Tamiko Denson grew up in Southfield. Her mom still lives here, but recently the place she's called home for many years has seemed a little less inviting.
Let's get the blacks out of Southfield in November.
The flyer was found on the ground Friday, and it's being distributed in neighborhoods around Southfield by an anonymous source. The message on the front of the flyer is straightforward enough and offensive to most, but...
So, yeah, that aspect. So, literally, aspect through oppression. They don't want you in the land. Like the video we watched earlier. Nah, we really don't want to live by them. We don't really want to be next to them. Egyptians thought the same way. You think think about it. You see the Koreans, they own, and you see the Korean, Asians, you know, they own these beauty salons, they own these dry cleaners, but do you see them really in your neighborhoods? Do you see them as your next door neighbors like that? No. They don't live in your neighborhoods. You know, same thing with the Arab man. You know, he owns a lot of these 7-Elevens, these gas stations stuff, but you don't really see them in your neighborhoods like that, right? Same thing with the white man. Same thing, you know, with the African man. They don't really live with you. They don't really live next to you. They don't like you. They want to be separated from you. They want to be with their own people. They give back to their own people, back to their own nation. They're not trying to help you. And that's why they'll more so complain about the state of being that you're in than do anything to fix it. You know, the white man is so quick to complain about the issues of the black community, but won't take any sort of incentive, initiative, give any sort of funds to help improve the situation of blacks and Latinos. You notice that? Because that's what they want to do. They want to complain about it, but they don't want to do anything realistic to help you. You also have redlining. This is still an aspect. This is still a thing. So redlining just sounds like an old-timey term, a practice that exists only in history and our retellings of it. The word was particular roots in the 1930s when the government-sponsored Homeowners Loan Corporation first drafted maps of American communities to sort through which ones were worthy of mortgage lending. Neighborhoods were ranked and color-coded, and the D-rated ones, shunned for their inharmonious racial groups, primarily blacks and Latinos, were typically outlined in red. This government practice was swiftly adopted by private banks, too, during an era of massive home ownership expansion in the U.S. and the visual language of the maps became a verb. To redline a community was to cut it off from its central capital. To be redlined was something even worse. The federal government eventually retreated from the practice, and it was outlawed by the Fair Housing Act in 1968. Black communities have warned that it still exists in subtler and changed forms, and bank tactics that have targeted these same neighborhoods for predatory lending, or new patterns like retail redlining. Some of the persistent redlining, though, still looks an awful lot like the original, which when you research, they do all sorts of things. From you have certain aspects of, realtors showing you certain areas, but they won't show you other ones, and showing you certain homes, but not showing you other ones. All from aspects of how, banks and everything run your credit, and all sorts of things that they do. But with redline, they have the aspect of, okay, this is our housing inventory. These are the best areas. These are the still desirable areas. These areas here are declining. These are hazardous and, not as desirous, and these are future development areas. So like we're dealing with gentrification, which is the process of renewal and rebuilding accompanying the influx of middle class or affluent people into deteriorating areas that often displaces poor residents. We're the ones being displaced, moving out to other areas further away, like just for those in California and LA area, moving out to San Bernardino, Lancaster, Palmdale, because all those areas, Bakersfield, because they're cheaper and everything's becoming more expensive here. But most of those people, almost all of them that stay out from here, LA to San Bernardino, and from here out to Palmdale, Lancaster, all have to commute back here. So even if you do move out there because the actual housing is cheaper, you're kind of gonna just pay it all back in your commute time and in gas. It's gonna kind of all be dished right back out. So it's putting you back in the same predicament, actually worse, because now you're losing out on all of that time because of the commute. So it's actually gonna put you deeper in hell. And even when you look at the aspect, one of the first forms of gentrification was the Trail of Tears, Native Americans, moving them from home to home. That was true gentrification when it first started. Or manifest destiny. It's the white man's destiny. We should have rights to all of this. Therefore it gives you the right, we can push you. But let's get this. Get Antiquities, once again, reading this, as it says, now it happened that the Egyptians grew delicate and lazy as the painstaking and gave themselves up to other pleasures, and in particular to love of gain. They also became very ill affected toward the Hebrews, as touched with envy at their prosperity. You don't think the white man had the same aspect? Like we read about Tulsa, Oklahoma, right?
Right,
you don't think he was
dawn,
envious?
As many as 10,000 whites descended upon Black Tulsa. Opening fire. There was a block-by-block battle throughout the black community. They would force the occupants of the house out. If people resisted, they were murdered on the spot. The homes were looted, and then they were set fire to.
Did the white authorities do anything to try to prevent this, or
they control it? They don't. They spend most of their time arresting blacks and disarming blacks, preventing them from defending their homes and businesses, taking them to these internment centers around town.
Sounds like a precursor of ethnic cleansing.
Absolutely.
Kenny Booker's father hid his wife and 5 children in the attic just before armed whites came to the front door.
We could hear him from the attic talk to him. Said, "Nigga, do you have a gun?" I think he said no. And he said, "Don't set my house on fire, please." We didn't tell him why, but after he left, not long after he left, they set it on fire, and we had to scramble down in a hurry. And his sister was 6 years old. She said, "Is the world on fire, Kenny?" I said, "I don't know, but we in trouble, deep trouble."
The trouble came from the air, too. Investigators say some of the fires you see in this rare footage of the riot were caused by whites dropping explosives from World War I vintage planes flying over Greenwood. The flames destroyed almost every home and business in Greenwood, 35 square blocks in all.
We didn't have no home. Everything was burned. All over there where we lived, just burned down to the ground.
Late in the day, martial law was declared and National Guard troops patrolled the streets. The dead were everywhere, the bodies lying where they fell. Photographers turned some of their grisly pictures into souvenir postcards. Most of the dead were buried quickly in unmarked graves around town, but some apparently were laid to rest here in Tulsa's Oak Lawn Cemetery in this anonymous section, reserved for paupers. There were no funerals. The authorities outlawed funerals. There were no coffins, no headstones, no records of the burials. But a 10-year-old boy saw it all. Clyde Eddy walked by the cemetery with a friend, saw some men digging and some big wooden crates.
And we went in, naturally, and walked up to the first one and raised the lid up. There were 3 bodies of black men in it, just thrown in there. And we went over to another crate, a larger crate, and raised the lid on it. And there was 4 bodies in this one. And there was, let's see, 1, 2, there's either 4 or 5 more boxes scattered around. And about that time, one of the men saw us, and he run us out.
The newspapers didn't think the mass graves deserved many headlines, and the White City Fathers, proud of their booming oil town, wanted to bury the story along with the bodies. The official version, typos and all, came in a National Guard report. It said there were 35 dead, 9 whites and 26 blacks. But that number just keeps on rising.
We think now that something like 300 people were killed in this.
How many people were left homeless by the riot?
Oh my gosh, 10,000 people were left homeless by the riot.
How many of those were white?
None.
The survivors lived in tents and shacks which they built themselves.
My brother was 14 at the time, and he helped my father install wood. It was raining, as I can remember, rain. It seemed like it was rain, and we had wooden floor in our tent. We were lucky to have that.
But Tulsa's whites gave them something, promises. Now, in fact, after the riot, the city's white establishment said it was going to rebuild Greenwood. What happened?
They lied. Not a dime. They proceeded to pass a fire ordinance that said, in effect, that you cannot build on property that had been burned. They wanted to starve blacks out of the land. They made it known to all philanthropic groups, we don't want your money. We would take care of our own. And there would be no problem. They spoke. They lied.
So you see the aspect that, you know, white people were so jealous of our prosperity. Remember, they were going through depression at that point in time. So with it, just like the Egyptians, they were once again touched at our prosperity too. White people the same thing. So what did he do? Bombed our neighborhoods. You know, that was the first airstrike that he did, bombing our neighborhoods. So, but with it, you know, he won't see it that way. They'll just say, oh, a few people died. You know, just like 20 deaths. You know, they didn't want to keep records because, remember, he doesn't want to keep history of the negative things he's done in this country. He'll keep history of the positive things. You know, he tried to vindicate or clear himself or absolve himself of all crimes that he commits. So, of course, he wants to bury it under the rug. Yeah, give a conservative number. It was like 80 people. But no, when they did the research, we found more like, man, like 300 people. You know, 300 blacks that were killed. You know, but then in the aspect, when you look at how many were displaced, you know, you look at 10,000 people. Imagine that. Imagine 10,000 blacks and Latinos displaced, Native American displaced. You know, imagine that in LA alone, because he bombed, you know, the areas, bombed the hoods, whatever it was. You know, imagine that. And imagine now you got to build some sort of shack or some sort of tent to house you and your family. And white men, oh yeah, we'll come. Yeah, of course. You know, we'll come and we'll rebuild and, you know, never rebuild. Just lied to you, like you said, straight up lied. And mind you, these things are still relatively recent. There were people that were alive that went through those things. This isn't something that happened because white people make it seem like stuff happened like hundreds of years ago. You know, they keep pushing back slavery. Oh yeah, that was something like 500 years ago. Our forefathers did. Get over it. You know, it's like the Caucasian woman in the film, the Edomite in the film they were watching. Oh yeah, that's slavery. Then you get past it. That was like, you know, 400 years ago. They make it seem like, you know, right afterward, everything was just a cakewalk afterwards. It was just beautiful and peaceful. There wasn't forms of oppression. Still happened like that. That was very recent. Your grandparents and some of your parents could tell that story. That they lived through, that they went through. So yet and still, you know, aspects, once again, the conquistadors and their genocide. Same thing. Read that Antiquity of the Jews, Book 2, sentence 202, or Book 2, chapter 9, verse 1.
For when they saw how the nations of Israelites flourished and were become eminent already in plenty of wealth, which they had acquired by their virtue and natural love of labor, they thought their increase was to their own detriment, and having, in length of time, forgotten the benefit they had received from Joseph, particularly the crown being come into another family, they became very abusive to the Israelites and contrived many ways of afflicting them.
So the same thing with the Native Americans. You know, you look at the aspect that they did so much help to the Caucasian community because, once again, our people have that loving spirit. You know, we want to help. We want to see, others do well. We have that. But yet and still, white men contrived in many ways to get over on us, many ways to defeat us. Everything he did was always ill-affected to him. We trusted him again and again. He kept slapping us in the face. Oh, here you go. I got this to help you, and he come and slap us, and it was just an accident. Yeah, he didn't mean it. All right, here, we can help him. Let's make another treaty. Oh man, he slapped us again, and it was just an accident. He didn't mean it. We can, once again, we still do that to this day. Our people still to this day, Stockholm syndrome, want to just love their oppressor. He ain't so bad. He gave me EBT and GR. He takes care of me. He's not so bad, because they don't know the history. Because these things aren't taught. I've met people, 40, 50, 60 years old that don't even know all the history. That still don't know, what do you mean, what about that? What do you mean Tulsa, Oklahoma? Still never heard about it. Because the white man doesn't teach it. And so our people, we don't research it, so a lot of times we just don't know. You got a lot of kids, blacks and Latinos, they don't even know about this, history. None of them know about it. Manifest destiny, destroying our people. So the Trail of Tears, migration from South Carolina to Oklahoma. Looking at all our people that died. Trail of Tears for a reason, because of sorrow, and all our people dying during the aspect of travel and affliction. So, traveling through the snow and all these things, being driven, from where they were. Look at the KKK, still aspects of oppression. All these things, think about it. When he says, that the Egyptian thing that they were consulting against, they were consulting. It wasn't just, a quick meeting, they just started doing it. So, no, they were consulting again to destroy us. Same thing with the white men. All these things, the same thing that was taking place today was the same thing going on back then. No different. Same way to destroy our people. Let's get Exodus chapter 1, verse 15 through 16.
Exodus 1 and 15. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Sephora, and the name of the other Puh. And he said, when ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stool, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then ye shall live. Then she shall live.
The same thing. Why? The white men did the same thing. Use our people against us. Did not he do that? The Egyptians, they were been doing that. That's where he got it from. The same thing. That's what the Egyptians doing. Use their own people against them. Yeah, just tell them, you see these people, go ahead and kill them, destroy them. Remember, that's what the Pharaoh said. That's what the king of Egypt said. It was government law. Did not all these things that were going on, did not the government allow these things to go on in America? Did not the government allow the KKK, the bombing of Tulsa, Oklahoma, slavery? Were not these things legal? Were not these things still okay? The same thing. Same thing in Egypt. These things were legal. Nah, go ahead, we're going to take care of these Hebrews, kill them. They always use your people against you. That's nothing new. That's why I said there's no new thing under the sun. All these aspects are things that, were already done back then that are still continuing to do now. And it just may be slight tweaks of how they do it. Because that's still abortion, that was their way of aborting back then. One of the ways. And then the same thing even with today. Still aspects of getting our people to get abortions. Aspects of trying to get our people to, once again, vaccinate. Destroy our people through vaccinations. Give them all sorts of diseases in all aspects. They do less educating for ourselves, and they do more educating to the so-called white man and showing him what it is you should and should not do and what's really in them. But anybody have questions on what we've been covering so far? Is it kind of piecing together? You guys doing all right? So making sense? Okay. The goal is, to bring out more of the similarities between these things, all right? So that you guys can see, You know how, man, the same mindset and ideology of the Egyptians then, that's the same mindset of the white man today. The same way you read about it, you have to look and put in perspective. Damn, that's the same thing going on at this point in time. It's the same thing. You guys starting to see that more? All right, well, good. So, you know, even the aspect in, you know, what you have, like in verse 16, you know, and it said, you know, the same thing with our people. They were trying to get our people once again to abort our own people, destroy our own people. Because you look at, you know, all the aspects of our people that are against us. You know, you have so many, as they say, coons, right? So many coons. That wasn't something that just started recently happening. Now, it's something even back then, you know, aspects of our people. And these two sisters in particular, you know, they stayed faithful to the Most High. But that doesn't mean all our people did. You know, and don't even think when our people actually did exit out of Egypt that all our people left. Some people stayed. Some people still wanted to, you know, do in the ways of the Egyptians. So, you know, even aspects of, you know, when we get into the taskmasters. Actually, let me see. Get verse 22 real quick. 1 and 22.
And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive.
And why is the aspect of saving the women? Because think about Esau's mindset today. He's in the same predicament. He says, yeah, you know, I hate him, but you know what? Put the woman over the man. Destroy the man, but save the woman. That's the aspect of his ideology and mentality. So, and I got you in a minute. But you passed the brother Mike back there with the white shirt. But with it, that's always been his mindset. Destroy the man, save the woman. And he does that. That's why he'll go ahead and he'll give, you know, the black and Latino the black and Latino woman the better job, the higher paying job, you know, over the black male. That's why he'll give, and yeah, he'll push more so for her to go to school and educate herself, but not for the black male, because he wants to keep that black male from reproducing, because he does not want his seed in the earth. Go ahead, you have something to say?
I was about to say that. Yeah. So he says, kill the black male so he can spread his seed. So white man can spread his seed all over the place.
Exactly. Because the same thing with the Egyptian thing, they wanted to multiply.
And another point with that, right now, Esau is projecting that by 2025, that all the world people is going to be light-skinned. But what they're doing is allowing white men to go after black women so they can have these light-skinned babies so they can withstand the sun the way we do. So they children that have melanin. We, like people that don't know, they would think these are actually African-American or Israelite children. But in actuality, they are Edomites because of their bloodline. And that's what they pushing. That's why you're seeing a lot of white folks, rich folks, getting with black women. Like,
so, but yeah, you have all those things going on. You know, you have all those aspects. So, and with it, it's always trying to put and separate our people and have them one against the other. So let's get more of the taskmasters. Get Exodus chapter 1 and verse 11.
Exodus 1 and 11. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasured cities, Pethom and Ramses.
So the aspect that you had the Israelites building monuments, just like we came here and built monuments. You know, the same thing. It's no different. Now, you know, with it, I'm not going to say we built all the pyramids, but we did build pyramids in Egypt. So, and with it, we also built pyramids after that. Like you can read 1 Maccabees chapter 13, verse 27 through 28. Our people still had that knowledge. That's why when you come to the Americas, you see pyramids built. Our people still had that knowledge. So, but with it, we're building all these monuments, all these structures, working. Get Antiquities, once again, book 2, sentence 203, or book 2, chapter 9, paragraph 1. Read that.
For they enjoined them to cut a great number of channels for the river, and to build walls for their cities and ramparts, that they might restrain the river and hinder its water from stagnating upon its running over its own banks. They set them also to build pyramids, and by all this wore them out, and forced them to learn all sorts of mechanical arts, and to accustom themselves to hard labor.
Did not the so-called white man do the same thing to us? Forced us to build all these monuments, forced us to learn his aspects of doctrine and what he says we should learn as far as education. So demanding our children to go to school to learn these particular subjects, and most of which you never use in life, but he says it's important and vital. Yet still, how much of it do you think about? How much do you really retain? And think about going back to your high school experience. How much of that knowledge have you actually used? How much of it was actually beneficial to real life? But yet, hey, once again, the Egyptians doing the same thing. They force us to learn all these. Now, this is what we say you need to know in order to learn it and produce in our system. This is what you need to know. The same thing, no different. Because hasn't he accustomed us to make sure, hey, you got to work that 9 to 5. That's, hey, making it big. That's the American dream. 9 to 5, and you go get the money and, you know, go to your nice home, and isn't that nice? Don't you like that? Yeah. So the same thing, but nah. And the whole thing is, you know, even like the video we watched the first time is, you know, everything is getting a good job. They don't want you to become business owners, entrepreneurs. Nothing is ever made to try to teach you to benefit, to work, to build your community. Only to continue to keep his economy going. The Egyptians, the same thing. They wanted us to accustom ourselves to hard labor, building up their kingdom. What if for our people? You had slave overseers. That's what you had with our people, the slave overseers. And in the same regard, you also had the slave masters. No different. And us working hard on the plantation. But now you got the modern slave overseer. The same thing. Out there patrolling, making sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then you got the modern slave master. Same thing, making sure you're working hard the way you're supposed to be working. So you see that everything, and once again, that's why Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing has changed. It's the same concept, same ideology. The taskmasters then in Egypt. Working hard, physically laboring in Egypt. Then you get the slave overseer, the taskmaster, or the taskmaster, the slave overseer in America. You know, same thing with the slave master. Same hard, physically laboring jobs. Then you get the modern aspect. Always has to be modernized. The same thing. Modern slave overseer. Modern slave master. And then you got your slave catcher badge or runaway slave patrol badge. You can find up. It says plantation police. You know, have their own counties. Runaway slave patrol. And you get the same thing. I mean, you know, you get the same thing, which is a county police badge, as they say, since we aren't really on plantations anymore. You know, so they have to change it up a little bit. But still, nevertheless, the same thing, same source, same history. And then with it, all the lynchings, the burnings of our people, the destroying of our people, all these things continue to happen. So it's like, damn, you know, you get the high murder rates, you get all these things with the pipeline incident and all these things. You got the Native Lives Matter movement, the Brown Lives Matter movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, all these things. Because notice, how many guys, when last time you seen a Korean man or Asian man get gunned down in the streets like you? Who's seen that? Raise your hands. Who's seen it? What about your Arab man? You seen your Arab man fighting? Help me! You seen him? How come you, but have you seen it? Have you really seen, you know, that happening in the same aspect? Do you see them getting oppressed the same way as us? You don't see it like that. You don't see white people getting gunned down the same way as us. But why is it that? Why is it blacks and Latinos and Native Americans going through all this oppression? Because it's a spiritual thing. They're going to be against us. It's like the other nations, it's like for some reason, it's like this, some sort of magical or spiritual barrier around them that just has this shield of protection. But for us, we getting gunned down. I ain't seen no real authentic Africans to hear about any of them getting gunned down. I haven't seen anywhere in the African community them, we have to come together and help our people of this oppression. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen it, but it's honest, true. I haven't seen that from the Arab man, the Asian man, or the African man, or the white man coming up in that. I haven't seen it. Yet and still, the white man, you know, generally outnumbers us, but yet and still, we getting gunned at a rate heavily more so than him. How is that? Yet, blacks, Latinos, Native Americans still oppressed. They're the ones with these movements. Get Exodus chapter 1, verse 12 to 14.
Exodus 1 and 12. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. and they were grieved because of the children of Israel.
See that? Both the Egyptians and both the so-called white men, they grieve because of us. They don't like to see us thriving. They don't like to see us multiplying. They don't like to see us growing. Read on.
And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor.
See that? Made us to serve rigor. Making sure we work hard. That's the key thing they want us to be focused on is work. You're lazy. You need to work more. You're not working hard enough. You're honestly not. You can work so much harder. See, that's the problem with you people. You're at the bottom because you're not working hard enough. You need to put more time in. That's going to be the answer to all your problems. Let them tell it. But look at the history. We've been working harder than anybody, physically. Working to build up their kingdom, their economy, their nation. And guess what? If we want things to be easier for us, let all blacks, Latinos not go to work. This company will fall, period. Because America's a corporation. It's a big company. It will fall, period, completely. Let us all keep the Sabbath. They lose their heads. Let us all not buy, sell, and work, because of course, our people try to be creative. Boycott Target, boycott Walmart. Now the Most High said, look, keep the Sabbath. You shut all that down. You hit everybody. Because boycott Target, everyone going to Walmart now. It's not going to solve the problem. Look, boycott everything. Just said we rested on this day. Because we don't know how much power we truly have because we've been taught that we're powerless. And the only thing that's really going to get in our way is really the coons. The coons, he ain't going to work. Master, I work for him. You always have those. Yeah, we used to work. We used to work real hard. They don't want it. Yeah, we work. We eat. That's our people. Always going to have sellouts in the group. But the mass majority of us now, we could walk away from Esau's job tomorrow and go start building our own. Go start growing, plant our own fruits and vegetables. Now I say, we'll start from scratch. We'll do it. We'll learn. Think about it. Are there not black and Latino lawyers? Are there not black and Latino accountants, secretaries, doctors, teachers, gardeners? Most of our people working out in the fields. We can't do it? Hell yeah, we can. But let the white men tell it. No, you really can't do it without me. See, I'm really the brains of the operation. You guys, come on now. You guys really wouldn't be able to. Look at you now. Come on. Thugs and whores. Couldn't really do it. Let him tell it. With that all, continue.
Verse 14. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage.
See that? His job is to make our lives bitter. Don't you guys have a bitter aspect to your lives right now due to this captivity? You like going working at 9 to 5? Some people do. Our people nowadays, we happy in captivity. I got the job. Yes. Get to work that 9 to 5 with overtime. Man, I met some people that work 7 days a week and happy about it. Man, I love my job. Yeah, I'm working every day. You work every day? Yeah. Sometimes, man, even 10, 12 hours. I'm just on my grind. I be reading Facebook posts. People got all these jobs and got warehouse jobs, working every day. Yup, on my money game. I'm like, damn, you really happy. Damn, that's pitiful. That's bad. That'd be bad. You be seeing our people. I know a few of y'all, you guys have seen it. You guys have heard of Israelites. You seen either scroll through a post, had a friend, happy working at 9 to 5. Be grinding. Be up there working and singing and everything. Our people, happy to come to work, happy singing. All got that little slave song coming in. Nowadays, it's always some rap song. What you doing? I'm putting these boxes away. That's always our people. Happy to work. You know what they do? A lot of them. The same thing. That's our people. So, with it, man, think about it. Working the 9 to 5, increasing commute times. So 8 hours turns into 11 to 12 hours, plus time needed to get ready for work and wind down. People don't think or take that in consideration. So then, no time for family or friends. Still have to clean and cook for your family and try to teach your family. No time or no money or for vacation. So you got no time or no money for vacation or both. Can't afford the vacation or the time away from work to take a vacation. 2 days off, but 1 day is really spent taking care of things you couldn't do all week. And the other time is spent to actually watch, devote to your family, or while simultaneously catching up on the sleep you missed due to work and the commute to get to work, and how early you have to wake up just to get to work or just to get ready for the commute to get to work, just to be 15 to 20 minutes early so you can go to work the next day and not get fired, or to earn a placebo paycheck that 90% goes right back to the people you work for in the form of bills, rent, or mortgage, but hopefully you have enough left over to go to the movies or the club and to make you happy. Plus, the one day that you have, aside from that other day, to actually, deal with stresses and relationship issues, or plus the day-to-day stresses and relationship issues due to the time lost due to work and the arguments over finances you worked for, but had to give right back to the oppressor, right back to your master. But, repeat after me, we're free and we're not a slave. And that's it, end the lesson, all right? Hope you enjoyed the class. All right, so with anybody got any questions in regards to everything went over? Everybody straight?